Coming in just 2 months after the release of Thor, Marvel Studios and Disney would put out Captain America: The First Avenger on July 22nd of 2011. The film was produced on a budget of $140 million and would go on to make $370.6. When it comes to the reviews, the film sits at an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, with 201 fresh and 51 rotten. And unlike the previous films in the series, this was going to be a period piece set in World War II. But as the film actually opens up, it's set in modern day, as a bunch of scientists in the Arctic discover an old frozen craft. Through the ice, we can see the shield of Captain America. Flashback to March of 1942, an officer in the SS Army called Johann Schmidt and his men managed to steal an ancient relic called the Tesseract. It just so happens to be hidden in the Asgardian Tree of Life, which is a direct reference to the movie we previously saw with Thor. And of course the Tesseract is making a reappearance from the post-credits scene that was featured in that movie as well. Over in New York, we see that Steve Rogers is continuously rejected from joining the army. Various problems plague him, such as physical conditioning and terrible health. But it's not too long after that Dr. Abraham Erskine actually overhears him talking with his best friend Bucky about what he wants to do and why he wants to join. Abraham goes on and recruits Steve Rogers for an experimental program, but not before he gets some testing done. At this time, he's also introduced to Peggy Carter, who happens to be a British agent who is going to oversee the selection of the super soldier. As Steve Rogers is the one that shows most heart, he's the one that ends up getting picked. Over with Schmidt, who is known as the Red Skull, we see him and Arnim Zola continue to experiment with the Tesseract, making weapons of mass destruction. We then see that Steve Rogers goes through a successful transformation, becoming the super soldier known as Captain America. Unfortunately, he is the last of his kind, considering all of the rest of the specimens end up getting destroyed. Captain America is then part of the USO tour before he's helped by Peggy Carter and Howard Stark, the father of Tony Stark, to go overseas and put together a team of his own, who are known as the Howling Commandos. Here they're going to go inside, infiltrate Hydra, try to rescue the captured soldiers, which include his best friend Bucky Barnes. Unfortunately, the reunion is pretty short when Bucky Barnes ends up falling off a train during a mission. It is here that Captain America uncovers a sinister plan that sees Hydra trying to destroy and take control of the world. Getting onto the bombing plane that is being controlled by Red Skull and Hydra, Captain America goes face to face with his arch nemesis. The two fight and Red Skull grabs the Tesseract and is transported somewhere else in the universe. As there is no way to stop the plane from getting to New York and dropping the bombs, Steve Rogers must make the ultimate sacrifice. He takes the plane and drives it into the cold water, thus being lost to time. We then catch up with Steve Rogers, who wakes up in a 1940s style hospital. He seems very confused, as he realizes the radio is playing something that he was there live for. He ends up running outside and realizes that he's in modern day Times Square, where he gets surrounded by the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury, telling him that he's been asleep for 70 years. After the credits, we then see Steve Rogers as he's working out. Nick Fury walks up to him and tells him that there's a mission, with huge ramifications. This is the formation of the Avengers. The cast of Captain America includes Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, Tommy Lee Jones as Chester Phillips, Hugo Weaving as Johann Schmidt, aka the Red Skull, Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter, Sebastian Stam as James Buchanan, aka Bucky Barnes, Dominic Cooper as Howard Stark, and Stanley Tucci as Abraham Erskine. Captain America: The First Avenger is definitely as it suggests, a big branding start to the Avengers initiative. It establishes exactly who Steve Rogers is and what he stands for. It also lays the foundation for the power of the Tesseract, which we previously saw in the Thor post-credits scene, and at this time knew would be one of the main factors in the upcoming Avengers film. The film did far less in box office than Iron Man or Thor, but considering the name Captain America was definitely not as popular as those characters, especially when it comes to worldwide, where having America in your title can sometimes be seen as a negative in many countries. It's even a wonder that the film made this amount. Captain America: The First Avenger seems to be a film that has quite a divide in it. I myself love it because it's a throwback to the old 40s serials, and that's what they intended it to be. But many people definitely complain about the lack of action scenes and how they're cut, such as those serials. A lot of people also complain that it is one of the most boring Marvel films, and that it focuses too much on the character building and not enough action. Captain America: The First Avenger's lasting legacy will always be remembered as a film that took a great risk, a World War II period piece superhero movie that just hasn't been done before. But it would also have a negative legacy considering they never brought back the Red Skull. But it's definitely a movie that sets up the future of the MCU in a huge way. To me personally, this is my favorite MCU movie out of all of them. As most of you know, when it comes to picking a quote-unquote actual favorite superhero, Captain America actually ends up being my favorite, considering most of the other characters I like tend to fall on the vigilante side, or more of a anti-hero. This is a film that had to exist, and if Marvel would have failed with this one, I think the repercussions would have been far more severe than if Thor failed. Because after all, Captain America is the first Avenger.